Welcome, guys, to the Good Podcast. I am your host, and in today's episode, I'm talking with a good friend of mine, and his name's Sion Jones. He's a yoga and meditation teacher. He's from Wales originally, but I've got to know him quite well over in Liverpool, where he's lived for many years. So, first of all, thanks, Sion, for having a chat with me today.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really nice to be here.
Yeah, for anyone with a bit of background, quite a lot of people have actually watched and listened to my interview with Louise Kay, and when we had that event here, I did the interview with her, and then afterwards she did a small event, and you came over. It's funny, we were doing the interview, and I had to pause for a minute, and then all of a sudden she had a little message on her phone just to say, "Oh, someone else is just booked on," and then about half an hour later you turned up, and kind of like just started that way, isn't it?
Yeah. That's how we met, I think. Through Louise Kay. And it was really nice session as well. It was really good.
Yeah, she's doing a lot of good, and I think I'm actually arranging to do another chat with her, and to do it'd be the first time I've ever had her on twice, but I think with her kind of teachings and the presence that she brings to stuff can potentially be of some use to people at the moment who are finding it pretty tough. You know, we're recording this on the 9th of April, and the world is like, who would have imagined that, like how March, at the beginning of March, you would not have imagined that the world would have been like this at the beginning of April.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was going like full pace with so many classes and retreats, and like I was doing a lot with myself as well. And then I felt I was building up this big momentum, of a lot of change happening, and then it was kind of like boom, like stopped in one big kind of within the space of a few days. It was like just everything kind of fell in on itself in a way, I guess. It felt like that anyway.
Yeah, it does feel like that. And if you want to just show us the thing above your head. So you're back in Wales now. So that must have, not only have you been able to sort of like everything has stopped work-wise to you, but you've kind of moved back. Is it back to the family?
Yeah, back to my family home. Which is, I was in Liverpool and it was all going on and the lockdown hadn't happened yet, but I just had this real gut feeling that I should leave the city, So I just kind of, I came home straight away. And feels like a good decision sometimes.
And where about in Wales are you?
Yeah, but Ystwyth, which is like West Wales, but I'm about 5 miles out in this little village, and it's kind of an idyllic place to be, really. Just down the road, this quite big remote valley, and it's a good place for me to go. I went for a swim in the river this morning, which was really good. I've been doing that every day just to kind of like keep me going, keep me up. So yeah, in many ways, it's like really, it's the perfect place to be.
Yeah, I bet it is. That sounds amazing to just go and have a dive in the river each morning.
Yeah,
we've got some probably polluted streams close to where we are, which is probably not the best thing to get into.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's, it's really, it's just a really interesting time, and it's just really, I think I touched on it before we started talking. It's like, a whole reset going on, a pause, and this might be the only time this happened in our lives. And I reckon there's a lot of people are just itching to get back to normality. But for me, like, I've kind of, people who've listened to this podcast and listened to the things I've spoken about will realize that, I've made quite a few changes in my own life the past 4, 5, 6 years to sort of slow down and to rewire really the way I approach life and all that type of stuff. And I don't want this to, like, I don't want people to suffer through this, because there's a lot of people who are suffering. I just heard this morning that one of my good friends' mum is in the ICU unit in Liverpool. She's like on, she's really, it's really serious at the moment with her with COVID-19. So we're all praying for her at the moment. And that's when it really starts to hit home, because I haven't heard of anyone close by. I've heard of a few friends and family who've who've got it, but
Yeah.
very little sort of impact on them other than a cold, or, you know, some of them are losing the sense of taste and stuff like that. But they're bouncing back within a week or so. It was the first time I've heard of someone who's actually, you know, is like, but probably like fighting for their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of hits home, doesn't it? And I know there's quite a few people in my family who are older and have got some, you know, really in that vulnerable category, and they've got letters come through saying they need to stay in for 12 weeks because they're high risk and stuff like that. So yeah, no doubt it's really very, you know, it's crazy. It's like, I can't believe the way the world has changed. And I think they said maybe, I don't know, maybe 60,000 people might die from it in the UK, which is about, I think it's 0.1% of the population. So it's still tiny compared to, say, in the grand scheme of things, but it's because it all happens at such in like a condensed period.
Yeah.
A few thousand people might die from the flu each year, but that's over like 3 or 4 months, and the NHS doesn't get like overwhelmed. But yeah, it's just very peculiar time. But like I like to do, talk about stuff on here, it's like with every cloud, there's a silver lining to stuff. And
Yeah.
I've always said, like, I believe things, you know, happen for a reason. And this isn't necessarily happening to us, it's happening for us in some way. So a lot of us can readdress certain things in our life and to look, because I remember spoken of other podcasts, like supposedly something like 70% of people don't like the jobs. And out of that 70%, more than half hate the jobs.
Wow.
But I think most of them are just going on with it because they feel like they have to. Well, that's just the way it is. So I think some people who'll be furloughed now for, say, 2-3 months. Yeah, there'll be a part of them will be like, I need the money and want to get back to it. But I think a lot of people are going to maybe see, well, one, there might not be a job to go back to. And two, what else, you know, what is it that they actually want to do in their lives?
Yeah.
So, you know, might never get this opportunity to really, you know, change tracks. Because it's almost like humanity's changing tracks from it. And then us all individually can decide, are we going to go in a different way? And obviously, it'd be good to maybe talk about the effect it's happening on us. Because like for you, like all your retreats, all your classes, you'd normally do face-to-face, yeah, high studios, all that's just disappeared.
Yeah. 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 It's all gone. Although I'm now teaching a lot online. So it's kind of, it's meant that I've just basically within the space of a week, I kind of moved my whole business online. So I'm teaching a lot of yoga and meditation online now. And pretty much most of my weekly schedule is actually the same. It's just done via Zoom now, which is it's interesting, you know, because you lose the face-to-face contact, you know, and that's something I've noticed over the last 3 weeks or however long I've been here is I've not seen many people. Like in my day, living and working in Liverpool, I might see like 100 different people, and I might have 20 conversations with people and meet new people every day. And now it's like almost coming back to some ancient tribal way of being, where you just see the same people. I'm just seeing my family every day, you know, and I'm not having all that stimulation, I guess, that I used to have, like a real constant stimulation of things to do, people to see, like, so yeah, it's a completely different way of being now. And I think the internet's is playing a big part in all of this, because it's not like that's been removed. That's even more prevalent. Like I'm spending so much more time on a screen now than I was before, which has lots of implications as well, I think, for me. And the communication is now like we're having now, you know, this is the communication that we're having, and it's different, isn't it? It's kind of satisfies something, but it doesn't fully satisfy other aspects of social connection, I think. I don't know, what do you think about that? But
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. Like, for instance, you've shifted everything online, and I'd imagine when things go back to, you know, the the things that are in place, the lockdown, it gets relaxed. It'd be interesting to see how, I think a lot of people will obviously go back to doing the normal stuff, but I think that online thing, that they've given themselves 2-3 months training in getting that set up, and that I'd imagine that'll stay in place for a significant amount of people.
Yeah.
So it's very, very peculiar. Like, we had to nip out yesterday to go to an appointment at the hospital, and it's just, you go on the motorway, and normally these motorways, like where I live, we live in, like, on the edge of the M6, about a mile away, and it's normally just, it almost feels like it's turned into a dual carriageway, like a quiet dual carriageway.
Yeah.
And all it is lorries, which is great because they're obviously keeping everything moving, so we can all continue to eat food and to get whatever other supplies we need. But yeah, it's very eerie. But there's also there's a lot to admire about this way of being a bit. And I'd like to think, interestingly, like one thing I've been reading, like Germany, on Sundays they still have the thing in place where nothing's really open on a Sunday. Basically what it used to be like here in the 80s, maybe early 90s, I don't know, when everything was closed on a Sunday. You just have a couple of hour windows. Maybe the pub was open for a couple of hours and it was closed. And then everyone would just retreat back home, or they'd be out on the park and stuff, or playing sports. And I'd really like us to get at least a day of that back, at some point when it does all bounce back. Because I think, like you said, we're constantly overstimulated. And even now we can be very overstimulated with the internet. Like, we've got to be careful. I was watching something and I heard someone's phone. It tells you how long they've been on the phone, and with like, today's been 14 hours use on the phone.
Wow.
Like, that's insane. You're gonna spend 14 hours on the phone, and okay, I can imagine. Don't get me wrong. Even a few weeks ago, when it all kind of like kicked off, I don't really watch the news. We don't watch it on TV, but I just started following it on my phone, because it was just like these constant updates. Because this is probably the first time that something's happened that everyone's getting impacted by. You might hear about something that's happening. I don't know, there's a massive hurricane that's happened in New York, or there's been earthquakes somewhere, or there's been a bomb somewhere. We can have compassion for it and feel into it. But this is one of the few things that's happened where everyone's been affected by it. So, yeah, very, very interesting times. And I think as we come out of it, who knows what the world will be like. But I'd like to think it's going to be this pause button and a reset. And particularly what I'm thinking about as well is, like, look at the financial system now that's in place. It's not like fit for purpose. It's not something that is supporting humanity. And the way everything's set up, the way the stock market's set up, everything's just set up to make profit. And it's not necessarily about us and like humanity and nature. So we can maybe begin to ask a lot more questions, because a lot of the distractions that we would use, maybe going to the football once a week, party, all sorts of stuff, which can be really good distractions. We need a release in life. But because we've not got them anymore, I think there's more of a greater spotlight on other stuff. And like you said, all of a sudden the brakes get put on, everything changes overnight. You go back home to your family home, and you're kind of probably thinking, well, how long am I going to be here for?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think what's also interesting is maybe it's forced us to look at what we were distracting ourselves from in the first place. Because I think all the busyness, and I noticed this within myself actually, before this I was really busy, and I was making myself really busy, and I knew to some extent I was distracting myself from something. And I think a lot of our work within our society or our overstimulation or our over busyness is a distraction from something. And maybe this pause now is forcing us to look at what we were distracting ourselves from, For me, I think it's just like our feelings inside, and our maybe the sense of loneliness or like needing connection. That's been coming up for me. Yeah, so I think it's making us look at our core kind of wounds, almost, our core kind of things, yeah, that we were running away from, which is really difficult, I think, and it's probably a difficult process to go through it, but it'll probably lead to like better things afterwards, you know. It'll lead to some sort of, I don't know what the right word is, some sort of awakening or a greater realization of truth. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
definitely. I 100% agree with that. And I think like I really resonate with what you're saying about where most of the time we're running away from our feelings, and to like, always, you know, you can even when you can sit there and attempt to meditate or something, your mind can be pulling you out of it, saying you need to do this next, after this, go do this, da, da, da. And it's just pulling you out of that present moment, and to literally just to feel into the present moment, and actually to feel what's potentially out of balance with us.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, you know, myself including, still now will be still doing things to distract myself with, you know. Even I think you were saying before, like what you were saying, you were really busy, and it might feel like it's a positive busy in some ways. Like, you know, you're creating, you know, the things that you want to do, and you're doing these classes and you're helping people. But there can still be a sense of, like you say, busyness and overstimulation. So it's almost like as if the power plug has been pulled at the moment, and we're not the ones in charge of sticking it back in. It's like it'll go back in when it's supposed to go back in, and
Yeah.
and that's when time is up. So
Yeah. And I think I've noticed, actually, I think it's forcing us, or I've noticed within me, it's forcing me to not even entertain the future. Like within my mind, when those thoughts about the future come up, I can see more clearly now than ever before that there's just suffering within thinking, you know, like, when's this going to end? Like, is my life going to go back to normal? You know, all this stuff, like all this future thinking, it's really highlighted for me that it's just not worth going into that. It's there's no value in entertaining that. Yeah, it's forced us into the now even more, for me anyway. That's what I've noticed.
yeah, definitely. And that, with that, it's like, yeah, it's so like we're so busy, we're so distracted, we're so, you know, running here, there, and everywhere. I often talk about it at times, like we're on this hamster wheel, and we're going nowhere fast a lot of the time. We're just going to keep up with everything else because everyone else is doing that, but we don't really reflect to think, is it actually madness us doing it?
Yeah.
And I've realized that by me actually slowing down in life, you can reflect more, and then you can choose a different path, which can get you to somewhere so much more amazing than if you were just racing ahead, just like as if you're in a race with everyone else. It's like, no, I'm going to, you know, take the road less traveled. And I think it's going to give an opportunity for a lot of us to take the road less traveled. And even though maybe what I do and what you do is a little bit, you know, different to the norm. Like, you know, we work for ourselves and we can make up our own hours, and, you know, we've got the flexibility to move around and go and do what we want pretty much. We're still in the system, you know, and I think that's the thing as well. Like, the system has to change. But it's interesting, look in the past few weeks, like how much, like all of a sudden, like every homeless person in London is now housed, you know.
Wow.
So the solutions are all there, you know. There's more than enough food to feed everyone yet, but now people are still struggling to get food as well. You know, a lot of people there's going to be some people, there's a significant amount of people, millions probably in this country, who are teetering on the edge anyway with the financial support that they've got in place. So yeah, it's showing, it's certainly putting a lot of spotlight on stuff, and this could be a moment actually that we look back on, that this is the moment that changed everything. like in 10, 20, 30 years time, like this moment could be like, wow, look what it did. And people might reflect on it like they think it, the Great Depression back in the 30s. But this could be like anything. I think there's an opportunity to find the positive in it and for us to go down a better path. And like you said about the mind, if we listen to the mind at the moment, my mind, if I listen to it too much, you'll be saying, well, you're going to have enough money in a few months. You're going to run out of money. Is there going to be enough food? Is there enough stuff in the fridge? Do you need to go and do another online order? It's like all these stuff. But actually right now, and this is what I'd probably say to a lot of people who might be listening to this, it's like, did you wake up this morning in your own bed? Did you have a meal? Did you manage to get some bit of fresh air? It's like we've pretty much in that moment, in this day, we've got everything, haven't we? It just feels like we've not. But it's nice to chat with you anyway. It's like, because we'll delve into you a little bit more and, what you've actually do and your path you've been on, and you're a yoga and meditation teacher, and you do your kirtan as well, is it?
Yeah, I do kirtan. That's probably my favorite thing to do, which is, to explain it briefly, it's I've got this instrument called the harmonium, which is kind of like an organ, a small organ that you play on the floor, and yeah, we sing mantras with it, like Sanskrit or Hindi mantras, and yeah, it's just, I can't really explain. It's just a beautiful practice that brings me a lot of joy, brings me an awful lot of joy. Yeah.
On that with music as well, because we after we met at the Louise Kay event, I just started to go to Five Rhythms around about the middle of 2019, and then just started bumping into you in there. And like, there's something so healing, isn't there, about dance and music, and something special about Five Rhythms. Now, some people, I try and explain Five Rhythms to some people, but I'll maybe hand that one over to you if you want to explain what Five Rhythms is.
Yeah, so they call it a movement meditation, and there's there's a teacher who doesn't really do so much, but the teacher plays 5 different rhythms of music. So the first one is flowing, so the teacher will play flowing music, and then you're invited to kind of move in whatever way you want to move, really. There's guidelines, but there's no real kind of firmly set rules. Like, you can move however you want to. So yeah, flowing music, and then there's staccato, which is kind of it's kind of like hip hoppy kind of music, or music that's kind of makes you move in a staccato kind of way. And then there's chaos, which is the third rhythm, my favorite rhythm, which is where the music is just going crazy and you can make some noise if you want to. And then there's lyrical, and then there's stillness. So it does this wave, I guess, of music. And yeah, it's a beautiful practice. Yeah, it's done a lot for me. I think I started going about 3 years ago in Liverpool. And when I first started going, I knew that I needed to go because I knew it was going to kind of challenge me, I guess. And I started going, and for quite a while, I felt quite self-conscious in my movement, and I wasn't that free in my body. I was quite tense, but the more I went, the more I started to feel a lot more free. And then before long, I was able to kind of just move in quite an authentic, free way. And it's done so much for me in terms of moving stuff through my body, like moving tension through my body, but also making me feel a lot more confident, I guess. Yeah, and also able to connect with others. I think that's a huge element of the Five Rhythms practice, is connecting with other people, and it's helped me come face to face with what my barriers were to connection with other people. So yeah, that and singing, they've both done so much for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love Five Rhythms. That's one of the things I'm really looking forward to going back.
Yeah, me too.
Getting back to doing that, we do it on a Monday night in Liverpool, and I always say at the end of it, like, there's no better way to spend a Monday night. Most Monday nights can be, well, I don't know, you can end up sitting in front of the TV, or it can be at the start of the week, and but yeah, just to be in there. And I think like you touched on it, it's the same for me. Like you find your edges, you get pushed up against it. I realized like I've got some resistance about kind of making eye contact with people for longer periods of time, especially
Mm.
when you're not talking. Like we're talking now, it's fine, but you know when there's no words and you just I end up like, you know, I'll look anywhere, but it's me recognizing that in me. And over time you just get better at it. And also it's like when you go there, because like you said about chaos, like that's, you know, my favorite part of it as well, is it? Well, actually it's that, and then after it, because I think you've shaken so much off in chaos, you feel
Mm.
like very light and you can kind of just float around the room.
Mm.
But at times there must be about 30 or 40 of us packed into like quite a small space really compared to some of the other spaces you can do it in. And yeah, it's a beautiful practice, and like I'm really grateful that it's there. And this, you know, it's quite pretty becoming a lot more popular, isn't it, over the years?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's growing. I think that's because there's a need for it, possibly. Like people want to do stuff like dancing, but maybe not with the kind of drinking and stuff that's normally involved with those kind of things. So it's a space for people to do that, and it's also, I think, a beautiful space for people to express their emotions while other people are around. And I think it's a space where it's okay to do that, and it's difficult to find spaces nowadays where you can express your emotions in front of others in a way that's going to be like accepted, I guess. So it's like it's a beautiful space for that to feel like you're held, I guess, by others. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And as you say, like in society, it's not necessarily acceptable to let out. To be honest, like some of the noises that will come out of us when we're in there, and you'll see some of the releases that other people will have as well. That you know, if you just walk down the street and saw someone doing that, you
Yeah.
know, people will be like ringing up, ringing up someone to come and collect you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then that sort of shows how sort of confined society's become, and it's not allowing us to like for instance, you look at kids, don't you? You see kids playing, 3 4 year old, whatever, they fall over, they bang themselves, crying their eyes out, next minute they back up, jumping up and down, laughing. You know, they allow their emotions to just move through them. But I think how a lot of us have got to the point where we don't we don't they're just constantly getting blocked, and then that block is just going in, it's just building up and building up and building up. And even I'm feeling it now, like even like I've got a nice home and we've got our garden space, but you know, I think almost like the fourth week of lockdown, I think it is, or something like that, you know. And there is stuff, you know, you want to be able to, you know, I want to go do them things a bit, and particularly 5 rhythms, because it helps things to move out. And I haven't quite, I keep meaning to go do my own practice in one of the
Mm.
spare room and put on our teachers, like I think she got about a 45-minute Spotify playlist that you can just go. I should do it really because it's just me, you know. Don't have to think about anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's really special for you in terms of because I remember I've seen a few of your posts on Facebook where you talk about anxiety quite a bit.
Mm.
Is that the thing that is sort of taking you down this path? You feeling, you know, overwhelmed, anxious, just that stuff coming up in you when you were younger?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm 31 now. When I was in my early 20s, and probably even before, um, yeah, I was struggling with quite a lot of anxiety, and it got to a point where I mean, I tried all the kind of normal forms of therapy, like CBT and medication and all that kind of stuff, and I guess it wasn't really working for me so well. And then I found yoga, and that really helped me. And then I also started meditating as well. And I think a combination of those two practices together, I saw that they were starting to kind of do something for me. I guess that they were really helping me to just relax as much as anything. That's what I was struggling with most, was feeling constant tension in my body and feeling that I was struggling with like all the symptoms that anxiety brings. So yeah, it was a kind of a long process, I think, but I really kind of dedicated to those practices. And then I started chanting maybe about 5 years ago, no more, yeah, just over 5 years ago. And I started this Buddhist practice called Nichiren Buddhism, which involves chanting this mantra. The mantra is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and you basically repeat that mantra again and again. And it was, when I found that practice, it was really kind of, it was what I was looking for, you know. It was kind of a way out, I guess, from the suffering I'd been experiencing. So I just like really dedicated to that practice. And I was doing, at one point I was chanting for like 2 hours a day, you know. I was really kind of like full on with it. And slowly through mainly that, and also definitely meditation and yoga as well, it kind of brought me out of that state of anxiety, I guess. And it shifted so much for me. And now I feel so much more free from that kind of stuff, and I feel able to like express myself. I feel more confident. I feel able to follow my dreams, you know, what I want to kind of do with life. So yeah, it's been quite a long journey, but I'm super grateful for the practices I found, really, because it's them and dedicating to them that has kind of brought me out of that struggle that I was going through as a young man. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I can find this in my life and a lot of other people's lives. And when you're saying that, it's like our struggles are things that we find, you know, like you say, anxiety and stuff. They're the things that can end up pushing us in a different direction. So
Yeah.
you to become a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, and then you can then share them gifts and help others from where they were, you know, on their path. And that's the thing, like looking at COVID-19 now, I think that's what might happen through this phase as well. It might then, you know, encourage more people to, I could only imagine over time, yoga and meditation. So it's already becoming a lot more mainstream, but there's still a lot of resistance to particularly meditation.
Yeah.
And I think even like you're hearing a lot, even just like you'll hear it on the mainstream now, people talking about box breathing and techniques to how to, you know, the people are going to get pushed into such a corner now with it that they'll feel like they've got no other choice but to find some relief, because they can't just keep distracting themselves with stuff, because it's the distractions just building. It's not actually getting to the core of what we're feeling. It's just like you touched on before. So, but yeah, it's interesting. And have you done quite a bit of with your training and stuff? I believe, did you spend a bit of time in India?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I worked in television for years, for S4C, it's the Welsh language TV channel. And I did that for years, and then I realized that that kind of work wasn't for me, I guess. So I left and I went to India, maybe 5-6 years ago. I did my yoga teacher training there, and then I spent quite a lot of time just traveling around India, spending time in ashrams, learning more about yoga. Then I went to Nepal, the Himalayas, and did a lot of hiking for quite a few months. That was really good. And then yeah, moved to Liverpool to teach. Yeah.
So, what's it like in Nepal?
Amazing. Yeah, it's probably my favorite country I've ever been to. They're Buddhist, so you get a real feeling of there's a lot of laughing, you know, there's a lot of smiling, a lot of laughing, there's a real warmth to the people. And then the Himalayas were amazing. I walked to Everest Base Camp, and we did 22 days of walking, and that was really, really nice. Like just waking up every day, walking, eating, sleeping, kind of yeah, it brought me back to some sort of kind of primal way of being, you know, just kind of just having a very simple life. Like yeah, it was really, really good.
And I'd imagine there's some similarities then with what's going on now, with us having to, you know, have much more of a simple life in many ways. So
Yeah.
you've had a bit of training in it, so you
Yeah.
can help others through this process as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what made you move to Liverpool?
Well, there's no strong reason. I mean, I was in India one night when I was still traveling, and I was like, what should I do? Because I had no plans, you know. And I was just in bed one night, and I was like, I need to move to a new city. Where should I move to? And Liverpool just came, and in that moment, I just decided, oh, I'll go to Liverpool. um, my brother had been to uni there, and I knew about the city, so it just, yeah, it literally was just that, a thought and a decision made. um yeah,
You just went with it.
yeah, just went with it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something amazing. Like I'm all my family's from Liverpool, and most people who will be listening to this podcast are aware that I've got the bit of the Scouse twang.
mm,
But there's something about the place. There's a lot of creativity, and there's also a lot of laughter.
mm,
The humour, the Scouse humour is, well, I don't say legendary. It's there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of creativity, and it's got its challenges. Like any major city, it's got a lot of challenges. But there's something about the place. Like I worked in Manchester for a lot of time. Like studied there and then set up my company there. So I spent about 13 years over there. But it
mm,
never felt like home. But Liverpool's always, something about home, isn't there? You just keeps pulling you back. And I think it's because it's on with Liverpool as well. It's on the water, and there's feels like there's more space, and there's some amazing parks because it's from the Victorian ages, isn't it? Where they really did a lot of good planning in the city in many places. But yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So you're back in Wales now. So how's the setup at the moment? Then how big's the family? What, parents?
Yeah, just me back here at the moment. My brothers are away still. So yeah, just me and mum and dad.
How many brothers have you got?
Two brothers. One's in Japan at the moment studying Japanese, and he's staying there at the moment. I think they've just gone into lockdown a few days ago. And then my big brother's in Cardiff. He's a Welsh translator in Cardiff. Yeah.
So not being too affected then by well, they will, but I'm sure he'll be affected in Japan. And it's a bit weird. I was speaking to a few other people they're in India actually at the moment, and it's actually Louise Kay, and she's
Mm,
like, it's a bit, she travels very freely, and she just retreats all over the world, and all of a sudden it's like, no, you're staying here. So like, I'm very fortunate this has happened while I'm at home. It would have been quite
mm,
challenging if you're on a trip somewhere. You see some of the pictures of people in airports, and when there's one, it's not great being in an airport for too long anyway, with loads of people just sat on the floor. But then when there's a virus swirling around, there's a lot of fear there.
mm,
One thing we've talked about a little bit, and I think what will come out of this is, we've used the word community a little bit in this and getting back to our roots. And I think a lot of us, not only will we be readdressing kind of how we work, but it'll be really significantly how we live and what our homes are like, and are we living in community? And, is the idea of a 30, 40-year mortgage really what we want in life? Do we want to just be working to pay the bills? And, I've explored it a little bit and looked at some potential to build a community or buy land and stuff like that, just a way of just getting back to nature and just living in a more natural state. Because even though the way everything's been is considered to be normal, it's not natural. And I think because it's just become such the norm, people don't question it. So like we've been for a few places, and we went to, there's a co-housing space up in Lancaster, which has got a really nice feel to it. There's about 40 homes on there. They've got a central hub. It's on the river. They all contribute each week 3 hours of their time into the place to keep the upkeep going. They've all, and one of them was a nurse, and if she was in the hospital, someone else, the neighbours would be looking after the kids. There's no need for childcare. And I love, what I like about it as well is if you do have kids, there's extended family all over. And the idea that it's not just down to the mum and dad to be raising this child and the grandparents, or that they might see occasionally or every week or whatever. It's down to the neighbours become like the uncles, and they impart wisdom onto them. It's a little bit like the tribe, go back to, I'm very fascinated about Native American tribes and how they would live. Probably about 100 to 150 would be the maximum that they go to. Very in tune with nature, the way they would. Obviously, that's the way it was until, the Brits went over and decided to do what they've done. Obviously, America's an amazing place now, but there's no doubt that there's been, a few atrocities over the years from the British Empire, which has been around the world. But yeah, I think the idea of us living more in community, getting back to basics a little bit more. There's a community actually, which probably isn't too far from you, which is a Lammas community. Have you come across that?
Yeah, they're in Pembrokeshire, just a few hours south from here. Yeah.
I first found about them, but Kevin McLeod did a grand design show on them, and it followed on the families, and it was so nice compared to some of the shows. And I think this is a really good example. Some of the shows is you got people with like £1 million budget to build these homes. They're getting super stressed. Some of them are having heart attacks because it stressed them out that much, trying to manage all the finances. They're on TV, so they're stressing about making sure everything's got to be perfect. And there's some of them, and then at the end of it, they're like, never do that again. But then when you follow some of them who were the smaller ones, particularly this Lammas one, they were, I think they spent £20,000, but they basically started with about 5. And they said, well, when the money runs out, we'll just stop for a bit. And when the money every time they get a top up of cash, they'll do some more. So over the course of a few years, they invest £20,000 to the home. Beautiful, grow all their own food, really connected with nature, got other like-minded people who were setting up their own different homes within that space. And I think the interesting thing with Wales as well is the government is much more open to communities and things like that happening there on the land. Like in England, the rules are much stricter on what you can do with planning. But in Wales, it seems to be much more open. And over the years, I've felt the pull, particularly to North Wales. Something, probably one of the reasons why, Wales isn't getting that affected by COVID-19 at the moment is because, there's not as many people. There's quite a decent landmass, but I don't know how many, a few million people is there in total? I don't know.
3 million in Wales, but then most of them are all in the south, in the Cardiff and Swansea, in the cities. So, that's a huge percentage of the population are down there. So, up from there is quite sparse, really. If I go down the valley, there are people around now because everybody's, out because of what's happening. But normally there's no one down there, and I can go. If I get to the end of the valley, it's 5 miles. I can be miles away from another human being, which is really nice. Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit about connection with nature, and I actually camped in the garden last night, which was interesting. And it was really nice spending the whole evening out there. I just sang on the ukulele, and it was full moon as well. So I was just watching the moon for hours by myself. And yeah, that brought me back to some feeling of connection, of connection with nature. And I think part of the community thing is, or my desire for community is also community within a space of nature, within a connection to that as well, I guess.
I love that you camped out last night under the full
Yeah.
moon.
I'm going to do it every night now, I think, while I'm here. Yeah.
That's amazing. There's something, isn't it? I was out last night, and I go out for not all night, but I go out towards the end of the night and spend 10, 15 minutes out just looking at the stars. I love, at the moment, you can see Venus quite strong in the sky, and the Pleiades star system is just down southeast from it. And I've got real resonance with that star constellation. And there's something about when you look at them stars have been looking down on us for billions of years. And it's that feeling that, what we're going through now, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like everyone's world's over, or in some ways, it's getting turned upside down. But things will carry on. As long as the sun comes up every morning
Yeah.
and the rain still waters the soil and the soil's strong, we're going to be okay. The rest of the stuff, like, interesting as well, it's really shown us what's important to us in our lives. So getting the latest iPhone or buying a new car or that new piece of clothing, any idea, which is driven by materialism and the marketing campaign, everything that's behind that. Everyone's really thinking, well, actually, no, I don't need that new car. I don't need them new things. What do we need? Well, we need connection with people. We need a roof over our heads. We need fresh water, and we need good food. And I'd like to think again when it pops out, because people just want the economy to bounce back. But maybe it's not going to bounce back from this, because we'll see. But I'd love that the fact that you've been out camping. That might inspire me actually to get the tent out, go out in the back,
Yeah.
camp out with the cats.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I was gonna put a message out on Facebook to tell people to do it actually, because I think it's one of the best antidotes for right now. Like you were just saying, like the sun is still rising every day, and the birds are still singing, and in some ways nothing has changed. Like if you go out into nature, everything is exactly as it always has been and always will be. So yeah, I think it's a good antidote for now. It's just to be in nature. Yeah.
And in a way, what's happening now is it's given us the opportunity to actually hear nature more as well, because there's not as much traffic about.
Yeah.
I look up at the sky, there's no planes flying about, and there's hardly any clouds at the moment, and it's just, and yeah, that's the thing. If you were to be plugged in watching the news all the time, you're just going to be in this heightened state of anxiety all the time. Next thing, who's got it? Every day, the numbers, how many people are dying. But this happens like every day anyway, whether it's to do with cancer, heart disease, war, kids. I think every day there's thousands of kids starved to death anyway. That should be on the front of the paper every single day until we solve that, so, but yeah, on the news, it's one of the reasons why I set this podcast up actually, is because there's so much good happening in the world, and there's so many people like yourself and others that are doing their bit to help other people, big or small, that I want to shine a light on that to encourage more people that we've all got it within us. And that's the thing, at some point I'd love to have like some Russell Brand on this podcast or other people, and that would be incredible. But it's great for me just to speak with people who are friends, people who, like, I had a neighbour on who's a runner. She set up a running group. She's helped hundreds of people to get out, and face the fears and get out running and, transform the life. And every one of us has got us in us. And I think if that can come, more of that can come out of us now, that, what good can we be doing? And that's what we've been seeing a lot of it. This is a Thursday, so at 8:00 we'll go out tonight and we'll be clapping for all the NHS and all the nurses. And we did it last Thursday, and it felt so good. We went out, people are banging the pots and pans, keys, clapping, and there was just this real, I'm telling you that the human spirit is alive and well, and it's been awakened from this. And you go around and all the kids have been painting rainbows on the front of the houses, just like spreading light and stuff. And we're seeing the best of humanity as well during this time. And what's so beautiful as well is, like, nurses and people who are working in the health service, they've almost got that same level of respect as what people would have had, say, with the army in the Second World War, when they would have come home and they would have defeated Hitler. But now what's great about it is we're not fighting against another country. We're not, that's not happening. We're all on the same side at the moment. And it's really heartening to see all them things that are happening now. And that's why I was speaking to someone else on a podcast, say this would have just happened and it would have been like locked down for a week or so. Everything would have bounced back pretty quickly. But it could be 2-3 months, could even be longer. And it's not, even when the lockdown's off, things aren't going to bounce back straight away for a lot of, like, potentially a lot of businesses. Like for us, like we've been affected. Like we're a design company, and all our projects have either been paused or cancelled. So, and because we're in an industry that isn't necessarily, well, we're seeing it's not frontline, it's not necessarily essential. It's important because we do a lot of stuff with the NHS and other things, but it's showing that it doesn't mean that when the lockdown's over, all our projects and clients are just going to appear and go, oh, we're going to start. There's going to be a transition period, I think, for a few months as we sort of like reintegrate and recalibrate stuff. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. But yeah, I think when you're saying about camping out in nature and just looking at the stars, there's so much to get from it, and that you're saying about just reconnecting, and that's what this is all about, us just reconnecting with our true selves and awakening that part of us, or remembering that part that's always been there, but we've been distracted by life, really, or how life has turned into it. So
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. Like, yeah, it's forcing us to look at that as well. Like, there's no other option because well, most people are less distracted now than they were. So it's like it's taking us back to home, isn't it? And from the foundations, making sure that our foundations of home are as they should be, I guess. And yeah, and like you were saying, like figuring out what we really want. And I think what you were saying about the positive aspects, I think it's really good to focus on those as well, like to focus on what good is also coming out of this, and to keep ourselves more in that frame of mind, I think, because it's quite easy to go into the so-called negative and the difficult things that this is bringing up. But yeah, there's also opportunity and there's also positivity, I guess. It's just about seeing that, isn't it? Which can be difficult sometimes, finding that.
yeah, and in terms of you say about opportunity, I understand that during the '08 financial crash, a lot of very innovative companies started during that time.
Yeah.
Online companies which have like kind of like revolutionized the world, a bit. I think WhatsApp started around then, and Uber, and all these digital companies that come out. Like WhatsApp's playing a pretty important role for a lot of people now, and all the groups and staying connected and chatting. And obviously likes of Zoom, and like we're doing this over Zoom. So I think in this time, there'll be a huge amount of creativity that'll be poured into this. Whenever there's like big challenges, that's when we can really focus our minds a bit. It can feel like time is of the essence. Things will just be born out of it. So even though it can seem tough and we're all feeling it and we're getting affected, and like I said before, I've got friends, parents who are, really ill from it all. When we look back on it, we can probably stop back at this time and be like, wow, well, this is what came from it. And we might not see it for a few years. It could take a while for it to sort of manifest and unfold, yeah. And yeah, so it's fascinating. I just keep thinking now about getting my tent out. Oh, go and get.
Yeah, do it, man. It'll be worth it. Yeah.
And we've got good weather at the moment. Really good weather.
Yeah. It's been a blessing. Yeah.
I think we were talking about it early on, that if it was teeming down now, it was beginning of January on lockdown. Oh God, people already have the January blues after Christmas. It would have been an absolute tidal wave of that. So thankfully, it's happened in springtime where we can all get a top up of vitamin D. And that's interesting. I'm actually following a lot of people. I know everyone's pushing, they want to get the vaccine out and stuff, and that side of approach of it, from the medical industry, and, that can be all well and good. But I think what it's showing is as well is that it probably inspire more of us to start to look after ourselves a bit more, because the people that are really getting affected are the ones with, the chronic health conditions, the one who smoke, who are obese and have got, other issues and stuff. And I know a lot of time people, can have hereditary issues, and they can be in that situation for many reasons. But I think it can potentially inspire more people to eat healthy, And I know I'm hearing like people like still getting sick who are considered healthy, but on the whole, most people who are suffering from this are the ones who maybe aren't bodies isn't in the greatest place. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think it's like an opportunity to really focus on self-care as well, you know, like we've got more time. Most people have got more time right now, so it's a chance to kind of put things right that maybe we weren't doing. You know, it's a chance to do exercise every day. It's a chance to meditate every day, to do yoga, to do whatever you want to do, but have that as structure. And I think it's forcing us almost to have structure, because that's something that's helping to keep a lot of people, I think, kind of sane throughout this, is thinking like, right, 9 a.m. I'm going to do my exercise with Joe Wicks or whatever, and then 10 a.m. I'm going to do my meditation class, and then whatever, you know. So it might be helping to teach everyone self-care, you know. And also, I think if people are suffering during this time, it's kind of forcing them to figure out a way of fixing that, I guess. It's kind of forcing us to maybe look at ways or find ways to make ourselves feel better, or to just look after ourselves, I guess. Yeah.
What sort of guidance are you maybe offering people who are maybe, you know, you're doing your classes with people? Are you, yeah, I'm interested to know if you're imparting any kind of knowledge or wisdom onto them during this time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things I've been saying is like having a structured daily practice, I think is really kind of, well, if you're struggling mentally anyway, to have kind of a practice that you do every day, whether that's meditation or yoga or some form of practice that helps you with your mind, really, I guess, and helps to bring your attention away from your thinking mind so much. So yeah, I'm just saying that what I'm trying to teach, I guess, is that a daily practice of that is super important. And also being outside, you know, I know I'm going to stay at home, but, you know, like spending time outside in nature every day as well. Finding what works for people, I guess, what works for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of, you know, having that structure, because some people would be so used to getting up, getting out to work for a set time, have that routine, 9 to 5, back home, tea. If they got kids, sort the kids out, you know, and it's just, and now, well, it's all up in the air. Even if people are working from home, I saw a good quote the other day about people working from home. It says, I'm not actually working from home. I'm at home trying to work in a pandemic. You know, it's not a normal place just to be trying working from home. So you can't expect productivity levels to be anywhere near the level that they potentially could have been. But yeah, structure, something that's found for us as well, that's been really important. We've been working from home for over 4 years now. Before that, I'd have 9 years of getting up, getting in the car, going down the motorway, being in the office, and then, you know, go through the day. Lunch was set time pretty much each day. And then all of a sudden you come home and it's like you've got more autonomy and more freedom. But it's a bit like if someone's been in jail for so long. I don't want to associate working in an office as in a jail, but in some ways there's parallels across all stuff, isn't there? You know, you want that structure to people's day. I watched a good documentary, just popped in my head then, about Aaron Hernandez on Netflix. He was this American football player and got given like a £40 million contract, and then he ended up getting sent to jail for committing some murders. And supposedly he really adapted. He adapted better to being in jail than he did to being out in the outside world with so much freedom and money to do whatever he wanted. Like having, I'm not saying that any of us should be encouraging to go get ourselves into jail for this. And I don't even know where I'm bloody going with this, but back to the idea of structure. I think it's definitely helped us to be like, okay, in the morning. And we actually wrote a blog post about it on our site a few weeks ago about tips. And one of the things is you could still walk to work if you wanted in the morning. You could go before you start working, just go and do the same walk, 30-minute walk, bring you back home, and then start working. And that can be your journey to work, rather than feeling like you're just getting up and you've got your pajamas on and you're opening the laptop and plugging in. And even stuff like, even like, and this is the thing, like one thing that's important to sort of get across is sometimes like people are only putting out like, oh, look at all the stuff I've done today. I've been this productive and that. But some days, even if you just make the bed, brush your teeth and get a shower, sometimes that's a success in itself. Sometimes it's this, I achieve and do more and look what I've done. Then like I'm in that, like some of the stuff I share that looks like I'm quite productive with stuff. But there's plenty of times when I'm having a few days where I'm like, I'm not in a good headspace here, and I don't want to be like being productive. I just want to just slow down. And if you can just do the basics, sometimes that's good enough.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe it's a time to rest for us as well, like maybe we all deserve a bit of a rest. I think we do, like as people, because everybody works so hard, like everybody I know is working so much. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to just rest, like to chill out, to rest our bodies, to yeah, to just do just that, maybe. Yeah,
Definitely rest and refresh seems to be a bit of a thing that's coming up for me. I'm reading, I don't know if you come across any of the Seth books.
No.
It's by a lady called Jane Roberts, and it's channeled information from like the 70s.
Oh.
And it's all about the nature of reality. And really, it's quite deep stuff, really. And I've just picked that one back up. I started the book in 2012. And I read the first one quite, I got through that in a few months, but the second one's just been, I don't know, I just haven't quite got my teeth into it. But I just picked it up again. And I think in this rest time now, it's like I'm giving myself permission to read more and read more in the day. I used to just think I give myself a window to read before I went to bed at night. Like I give myself half an hour to an hour, that's when I'd read. But it's nice, like when you go on holiday, you'll read at any time. I'll read at 11 o'clock in the morning, I'll read. So it's giving ourselves that permission to, I'm not saying right now it's like a holiday, but it's definitely a time to rest and to, are you interested to know what you got any books at the moment on the go?
I'm reading this one book I've been reading for a while, which is called the Sedona Method. Have you heard of the Sedona Method?
I've not heard of Sedona Method. I've been to Sedona, but I've not heard of it.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's. I was about to write a post about it actually. It's basically this method devised by this guy called Lester Levinson. I think maybe it was in the 70s or something, and it's about releasing our emotions. So it's the idea is that we hold on to a lot of our emotions, and there's the method that this guy came up with is you ask yourself these set of questions. So first you ask yourself, how am I feeling? And you might be feeling, I don't know, angry. And then the next question you ask yourself is, can I welcome this anger? So partly it's about acknowledging how we're feeling emotionally, and then also allowing ourselves to feel that, to welcome it in. And then you ask yourself, could I let this emotion go? And you can answer yes. And if you answer yes, then you ask yourself, do I actually want to let it go? Do I want to let this anger go? Because I think a lot of the time we don't want to let our emotions go. We hold on to anger because we're like, no, like I need to be angry at this person or whatever. And then you ask yourself, am I ready to let this go? And then if you say yes, you are. And it's a really simple process, but for some reason it works like really profoundly. Like I've noticed it works really, really well for something that's so simple. It has helped me see that I can let go of emotions within a space of a few minutes rather than holding on to them for days, you know. So I've been blown away by the method actually in the book, and I've had this book for 6 months, and it's not a small book, but it's not a big one either. And I've read it every day for 6 months actually, and just going through the processes, the techniques with it, and it's done loads for me. It's been really, really, really valuable. So yeah, the Sedona Method it's called.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah,
I'll have to check that out.
yeah.
When you're talking about that, it reminds me of I got into doing EFT a few years ago, and I found that to have been really quite powerful and accessible. Like I bought the book, and within the first chapter or two, it's talking me how to do it. And anyone who's not aware of it, basically, it's called basically short term called tapping. Anyone that's watching this can see that you basically start tapping meridian points on your body, and then you work through your emotions. And one thing that I found to be really empowering about it, and it was one sentence in it, it basically said, sometimes some of us have been holding on to trauma for not just weeks, months, for years, decades, from an incident that lasted a few seconds. Now, and it said in that book, he said, well, just because if it only took a few seconds to cause it, it only needs to take a couple of seconds to release it. So it doesn't need to be 40 years of it, And I think sometimes we create this narrative and story in our head about things that have happened to us. And we end up building our identity around that stuff, and it ends up shaping a lot of things. And maybe some of us don't want to let go of it because it's actually turned into our identity. But if we really are ready to do it, it doesn't mean that we have to spend years going through counseling for it. It can be a quicker process. And I wonder whether, the book you're talking about there is a way of acknowledging them feelings and process. Because sometimes, like, here's the thing for me, like I've spoken about this on this podcast as well, about my challenges with anxiety and depression, and how I was on, medication in my mid-20s and took that for a few years. I was just, I couldn't explain how I felt. All I knew, I could only ever say I felt bad, I feel bad, but I couldn't define what them feelings were. I couldn't talk about the emotions. I couldn't talk about where I felt it in my body. Was it in my tummy? Was it my chest? Was it my head? It was just like, maybe you were talking about early on with the anxiety about, it was just like you felt so much tension all over your body, and you're just looking for a way out of it. And I think that's why I have a lot of compassion for a lot of people who, you can maybe see a lot of homeless people or people who are alcoholics or have got addictions. They're all just suffering like us in different ways. And maybe a lot of them haven't got the support network or the comfort blankets. They're like, a lot of people just slip through the net. Like, we're fortunate, say for instance now, where you are, you're able to go back home and be with your parents through this. And for as long as you want, really, you can feel like you're held by that. Where a lot of people will be like, no, it could be, I spoke about it before, like all the homes been pulled off the street, but I think there's a lot of people who don't have them safety nets in place. And when things go back to normal, the support that's in place from the government isn't going to be there unless they introduce universal basic income. And maybe we'll talk about that briefly, but we'll see. And I think it's just having more compassion for people and knowing that everyone's going through stuff, and we all put on a brave face. And I think, you speak to people and they'll use that term, "I'm fine," but are you really fine? And like I love to be positive. I see someone like, "How you doing?" I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm all good," but I'm not all good all the time. And I think that's why, like, I chat with you and stuff, and I can feel like I can build up a good connection with you, and I could, talk to you and go, you know what, actually, I'm struggling with this, and this is happening. And I think it's about us moving from that place of thinking that being vulnerable is a negative trait to actually being vulnerable and expressing how you're feeling is a really empowering and a really positive way to be. And if there's more people, and I think that's really happened the last decade or so, I think a lot of that sort of been breaking away. What are your thoughts on that idea on vulnerability and in a man particularly?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. I was going to mention masculinity, but yeah, everything you said really resonates totally with me. Personally, I never felt like you said, you know, like I just say I was fine, you know. I never knew when I was younger how to connect with how I was feeling, especially within my body. You know, I didn't know that these emotions were inside of me, you know, that they were in my body. And I think, yeah, as a man growing up, that I didn't have that ability to express my emotions. I didn't do it really with my friends. Hadn't done it growing up at all, you know. It's something I had to learn, you know, and I had to learn to even like cry, you know, like for like most of my life, I hadn't really let tears out or let my emotions come out in that way. And I'm lucky, like I found so many practices that helped me to start to do that, you know, and the singing and the dancing and everything has been so good for me to be able to let that out, you know. And then I think the vulnerability thing's a big thing, because I think as men, maybe showing our vulnerability is something that we are almost programmed to not do. It feels like as if we show we're emotionally vulnerable, then it's kind of a sign of weakness or something, or that we're not gonna, I don't know, just that there's a sense that it's not something you should do. Um, but I think it's actually a beautiful experience to be vulnerable, and I think it's actually a sign of strength, really, that you're able to be vulnerable. Watched a documentary called The Work. Have you seen The Work?
No.
Oh, you'd probably love it. It's these people that are these guys go into a prison, a men's prison. It's a documentary, and they do what they call men's work, which is basically just speaking, like group therapy, I guess, for men, talking about everything they've been through in their life. And it's a super like emotional documentary. I was crying quite a lot watching it, and it just shows the raw vulnerability of some of those men that are in prison and everything they went through. And yeah, it's an amazing documentary. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's something really important that's happening a bit more nowadays, is that men are maybe sharing their vulnerability a bit more. And I think it's a really important thing. You know, like I read something a few days ago, 75% of suicides are men, you know, and it's the biggest killer in the UK is men under 40 ending their life. So yeah, I think it's something that something that it needs, I don't know if it needs to be it needs to be looked at, or we need to kind of find ways to help men to be able to start to express their emotions. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's embracing that side of stuff, and it's getting over that thing that a lot of men have been told when they're younger. You know, big boys don't cry.
Mm.
And you know, I've talked about this in this podcast at times, and you know, if you look at a little boy 3 or 4 and a little girl, you know, they both cry as much as each other. You know, but at some point, the programming kicks in, um, from the parents or from society and grandparents, whoever. You know, because it's that, which is an outdated ideology now. You know, being macho. You know, because we're seeing of plenty of people who are, like you said, suicide in men, and because they're put on a front, put on a face of how it is out the world, but when they go home, could be in some real terrible states. And I think, you know, what you're doing and us talking about this stuff, and there's more men. I'm seeing a lot more men's retreats appearing. I think I actually shared one with you, which was with a yoga teacher, James Bogue, that we're going to potentially, you know, think about going on, which that's probably not going to happen in May. But I think I feel really drawn for that. And I know Martin Bone, who I've had on this podcast, he does men's retreats and he's doing amazing work in Liverpool. Absolutely incredible work what he's doing. And yeah, he's really like, because he's like, you look at him, he's a masculine man, strong masculine man. Yeah, he's very vulnerable. He'll talk about his feelings. I'm sure he'll have a good cry. He'll be there for men, as well. And I think if more people are seeing them kind of men, being like that, it's a bit like even like Joe Rogan and people like that. They'll talk about their emotions a bit, and they'll be quite vulnerable as well. Even though these are like these big macho men, and we're seeing it more and more. So I think the more of us that can have them as our like more male figures like that in our lives, and if that has to come online or if it has to come through a book to empower us, some of us might feel like it didn't come from our parents growing up. Then yeah, all the better. And I think it ties into what I was saying before about the idea of us living more back like a bit of a tribal type thing, community. It takes, people talk this term like it takes a village to raise a child, and we've put too much pressure on two adults like raising children to try and give them everything they need. And one thing can probably come from this now is that I assume a lot of mums and dads are not working and they're at home with the kids, and they're homeschooling them and they're spending more time with them. And, there's going to be I think a lot of good can come out of that as well. But yeah, it's great talking to you, man. I could probably go on all day, but I'll probably have to wrap it up at some point. But so what do you see? How's things looking for you then going forward? Are you enjoying doing the online stuff?
I am, yeah. Before this, I already had like an online program set up and stuff. So yeah, I think it's good. It allows you to open what you're showing to a greater audience, I guess, and to maybe give your stuff to more people that need your things more specifically. I think it looks like online is the way forward for now.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like even me talking to you on this podcast, like this is why I started it in a way, was because I love having interesting conversations with people, and why not just share them? And if other people find value in them, then great. Sometimes I'll check the stats and I'll be able to like see which places are. And sometimes there's like just this village will pop up in like some remote part of America, and there was like 15, 20 listens over a couple of days in this place, and it's almost like someone's got it and then they've shared it with someone else close to them. And you couldn't imagine that someone in remote little state in America or wherever is going to be like listening to some of the conversations we're having. So you opening up your stuff more online, rather than you just having to do it to say 20 people in a class in Liverpool, it means it can be to 200 people or 2,000 people or however many at some point, given, And I think what happens as well for the internet, we're all more willing to share our gifts openly and freely. What that is at the core, I'm not sure, but we seem to be like more willing to be like, give stuff away online. And that in a way is just going to help, I think generally just helps to lift society. And rather than it being like competitive and I'm just holding on to what I've got, it's like, no, I'm going to freely share stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. We'll see. Like I said before, this is recorded on the 9th of April. So when this goes out, I'm not sure yet, but the actual, who knows what state the world will be in. And I know at the moment, Boris is currently in intensive care. So, we hope he comes out at that one and he's, makes a full recovery to it, but we'll see how things unfold. But do you know what I'd like to just ask you? I always ask them all my guests this, and if you could just want to ask you as well. So obviously this podcast is called the Do Good Podcast, all about sharing what good people are doing. What advice would you give someone who's looking to go out and do their own bit of good in the world?
I guess it's about connecting with your own heart, really, isn't it? And connecting with, I think that the answer to that will come from each person's heart, I guess. Just connecting with themselves, and I think the more we allow ourselves to do that, the more those answers maybe come. I think that happened with me. Like, I think the more I meditated and stuff, the more I saw that the work I was doing was not what I was meant to be doing, and that actually I was meant to be teaching yoga and teaching meditation, and I think that just came from meditating a lot and from doing a lot of yoga. So yeah, I don't know if that's, yeah, I think that's my advice.
Yeah. That's sound advice, because that's the thing, you know, we've all got to find our own path, haven't we? Sometimes we may see what someone else is doing and go, I want to do that. But from what place is that? Is it from the ego? Is it from the mind? Or is it from something deeper inside? And I think, like you're saying there with meditation and going within, we can get so many more answers on the inside if we just can quiet the mind and be open to it. And then, like you said, I asked you before, why did you move to Liverpool? And you said, I got the inspiration, I got the thought, and then I followed it. You know, you were meant to go to Liverpool, and you didn't overanalyze it. It felt right. And that's the thing about what feels right and what feels good, and what, you know, I'm doing my best now to go off what, if I think of doing something, how does it make me feel? Do I get that feeling of excitement, or is it more like, is it just a thought and then a feeling? So if I can go off the feeling and trust the feeling, does it feel a good feeling? You know, it's kind of just using our own inner guidance system. But yeah, I like that advice, Sean. I really appreciate that. Well, it's been great chatting to you, and I can't wait to see you again at Five Rhythms on our Monday night and have a dance and have a hug. You know what? That's what I'm missing. I'm missing hugging people. I'm missing hugging my mum and dad. You know, fortunate I live with my wife and we've got the cats, so, you know, we can hug them and stuff. But that's the thing. I'm really looking forward to hugging someone and giving you a big hug when I see you in Liverpool. And in the meantime, I'm gonna get my tent out. I'm gonna put it up.
Do it.
You gotta share this though. Share these things on. Share these across social media. Inspire other people to do the same, man.
I will. I'll take a picture of my tent now and put it online.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. Well, it's been great talking to you, man. Thanks a lot.
Man, yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
So there we have it, guys. There's today's podcast with Sion Jones all wrapped up. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was nice for me to feel like I was just having a chat with a mate through there, and I was probably a bit more chatty through that than I have been on some other podcasts. So it was nice that. And you know, if you enjoy this podcast, guys, please, and you listen to it on Apple, please, you know, leave me a review or leave a rating. That would be great. And, you know, if you really fancy support me a bit further, then I've got my Patreon page, and you know, you can become a member on there. So it'd be great in here. But anyway, until next time, have a good one.